Hello everyone and welcome to my build for the Magicka Dragon Knight. So this build is, I guess, one of a kind. I haven't seen many of these out there. This is a light armor Magicka Dragon Knight build. So many people have said it will never work again. Well, bad luck them, because it does work. This build is just as tanky as heavy, but keeps the damage, the penetration, and the crit of light armor going hot. So what makes this build so interesting is that it can actually successfully tank despite being in light armor. It takes just as low damage as heavy. It has just as much blockability as heavy, but again, it keeps that damage of light armor. So we did call it Proctard's demise. Obviously, the reason for that is this is the build that can do it, essentially, because the thing is, what kills you this patch? It is procs. How do you kill procs? Kill them quickly. How do you kill them quickly? You need to be tanky as well. So this does it all. This is really, really nice. I did already release a heavy armor Magicka build. There is nothing wrong with that build at all. That build is really good. I was just asked to make a light build as well. People said you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. So though I'm hold, I have done it. Just proved them wrong. Generally speaking, some of the stuff is pretty typical. Champion points, skills, all of that. I'll go over it anyway, but it's very, very similar to my normal DK skill setup. I think the skill bar, especially for no CP, is very generic, in my opinion. A lot of people run different to me, but I really like this setup. But yeah, anyway, let's go on the sets. So, first and foremost, your bread and butter Valken Scoria. Glorious set. You can't get away with it. It is so good. On a DK, you're proccing a lot of dots. It's doing a decent amount of damage. There is quite a bit of counterplay. I mean, you can block that stuff, etc. But in general, it's a nice bit of offense to have that set. If it wasn't there, you've got options like Bloodspawn, Groft Dart, but I like the pressure that Scoria puts in, and if you do time your burst around it, it can be really, really nice. So, I like it. I can see it getting nerfed with the rest of the procs. It's not quite as bad as things like Viper, but it is very strong. But yeah, I think you just go Bloodspawn then, which doesn't really matter much. Our second set then is Blood Form. So, this is spell damage, Magicka, Magicka Recovery. It is light armor. When you deal direct damage, you restore 660 Magicka and stamina. So, that is near enough the same as Constitution. That is giving you 260 Magicka and stamina regen if you're on enough offense, which if you're a good player, you should be all the time-ish. And yeah, it basically does the job of Constitutions. This makes our light armor into heavy armor. It does exactly what we need. It allows us to block successfully in light armor. It has been popular set by quite a few people in the past, I believe, in heavy builds. Well, I can see it working really well in light because of our second set, and this is where shit gets good. Wizard's Riposte. This gives us health, which we need to compensate for the heavy armor health losses. Spell damage, great, that's damage, and Magicka Recovery helps us sustain. When you take critical damage, you apply minor maim to your enemy for 15 seconds, reducing the damage done by 15%, no cooldown. So essentially, in a real fight, they have near enough 100% of a fight where they are gonna have minor maim on them, which means they're doing 15% damage. This compensates for your resistance loss for going to light. How you want to piece this together is up to you. It does not matter. Both Wizards and Bloodthorn are relatively cheap, relatively easy to get. Shield and Sword easily bought for AP. One thing that's interesting though is there is a named Bloodthorn Sword Defending, which you're going to have on your back bar. So just keep that in mind when you get that piece. But anyway, traits. So, a lot of stuff going on even with the traits here. We are running Defending back bar weapon as per usual and Sharp front bar weapon as per usual. Our armor then has 1, 2, 3, 4 sturdy on the armor and 1 on the back bar shield. Everything else is impen. That way when we're on our offensive bar with the sharpen and not the defending, we have more crit resist to keep our tank ability up. When we're on the defensive bar where we're more likely to perma-block, we have the sturdy to reduce the cost of blocking. So we find a balance between the two on the shields. I have played around a lot with the traits. I really would suggest keeping everything the same trait as this. Our glyphs then are as follows. On the jewelry we have 1 bash and block cost reduction. That's called a glyph of shielding. Very, very nice glyph. Very, very good in this patch in my opinion. One of the single most underestimated PvP glyphs. You really want to run that. I then want reduced cost of Magicka. You definitely want that. It's going to make a big difference. Even in light armor, cost is generally high because we're not running anything else. I like that glyph. It makes a big difference. And then we're running a spell damage glyph on the final glyph just to amp our damage up that bit more. Our armor then, both the shields are Magicka. We do have triglyphs though on 1, 2, and 3 pieces. All of our big pieces are triglyphed. Our small pieces are currently Magicka. Adjust it as you like. You could get away with more or less depending how much you're blocking. I like the 3 though, because in no CP that puts you just above 32k Magicka, which is absolutely fine and puts you in the right spot. Our stats then. This is obviously with CP, and I'll explain the ones without CP are as follows. Is this with CP? Oh, my food's down, I think. It is down. Wait 1 sec. Now we have stats. There we go. Our stats are as follows. 37.5k offensive Magicka. In PvP, we're about 28, 29k health. In light armor, that's a lot of health. 16.7k stamina. We can block a long, long time in this. Our magic recovery is 1.4k, more than enough with that reduced cost. The blood fawn is giving you another 260 Magicka regen if you're using it properly. So you're already talking like 1650, 1700. And then of course on top of that you have your battle roar. So the recovery is more than enough. You don't need more on there. You do want that reduced cost though. Spell damage 1.8k. That can go anywhere as high as 2k depending. Before buffs. It's a very nice spell damage. I don't think you need more. And our resistances are actually not that bad. 20k spell resist. 14k physical, and on the back bar even 2216 before we even buff. So by the time we're buffed, we're pretty tanky. I mean 25k spell resist, 19k physical, back bar even as high as 28 and 22, so it's very tanky. Crit resist on the front bar is 1k, back bar obviously 700 because that changed to the sturdy. It's more than enough. I mean most of the time you're able to perma block in this build because of the stamina return, so don't be too fussed. Your block cost is only about 650 in this build. That's very cheap blocking. If you didn't have the sturdy and didn't have the block glyph, you're probably talking like 1.5k, 1.8k. So there's a huge difference in how much you can block in this setup. It's really, really tanky in its blockability. Just keep that in mind. You do want to block a lot in this build. Our crit, we are in light armor, so we have a high crit, 42%. No CP, that's going to be 30%. No CP, our stamina is going to be a little shy of 15k. And our health in no CP campaign is going to be anywhere between 25, 28k health, depending again on buffs. I think 27.5 is my normal. And then Magicka is going to be a little over 32k. So it's more than enough. We are using Vampirism for the extra recovery in our Magicka. It does help. We're using Atronach for the recovery as well. It does help as well. And of course, Try Food. You need the stamina, you need the health, you need the Magicka. You want all resources. It's hard to get away from stamina food in a DK build. Our skills. We are running Burning Embers, Bread and Butter, Big Heal, Big Dot, Big Sexiness. That's the skill to go with. Do not take that off your bar at any point, any time on a Magicka DK. We're then running Flamelash. That's going to be your base DPS. Tooltip 7.9k with CP. My last build's pretty similar, but keep in mind we're in light armor. So if I go on the light armor passives, we're gaining a large amount of damage. We have 5k more penetration. That is the difference between having a sharpened weapon and a defending weapon. That is a huge, huge difference. So keep that in mind. It is going to make a big difference to you in damage. That's going to be like another 8 to 10% damage on your whip. So really that tooltip is more like 8.8, 9k even. It makes a huge difference. And on top of that, you've got the crit as well. So that's going to crit on all your dots and stuff. It really does amp up. We're then using Mage Light on our front bar. That's going to increase our Magicka pool. Very handy. We're never going to cast it. It's just there for crit and Magicka. Fossilize, next skill on the bar. That's going to be for your CC and to proc your whips. And then we're using Entropy. That's going to be for your heal, a small dot. But more importantly, your major sorcery for your spell damage. Front bar ulti is the leap. That's largely going to be used as an execute against stand players. I don't need to spam that much. So a lot of builds as a DK use an ultimate on cooldown. I don't actually need to do that. I would say a lot of the time I can hold it back. The Magicka sustain's pretty good in this build. So can normally hold that off for when it's the right time. The best way to use this is wait until you can hear the Scoria. So you want to get a good headset, or at least, you know, ears that work. Listen. When you hear that Scoria proc coming down, that's when you drop your leap, and that way it comes at the same time. If you can sync your Inferno to that, even better, which is on our back bar, just by here. My favorite skill, single most underrated skill in the game. Why people don't use this, I am clueless on. It is the best skill ever. It still amazes me to this day that so few people use this. It's cheap. Every 5 seconds you do 6k damage. It's 15 seconds long. You also get an initial cast. This dot here is huge. It's 24k dot, and the dot comes in bursts, so it means you can time out an impact for big damage. It also gives us crit for our back bar, helping our heals, so happy days. Igneous Shell is there to feed our stamina. It's also nice for major mending. You only get 3 seconds now. Keep that in mind. If it's actually 2.5, it does make a difference to have that on there. I don't spam it that much, but it does make a difference. We then have Dragon Blood, that's our base heal. Obviously with a decent health pool, we also get a bigger scaling on that most of the time. Doesn't make the large heal bigger, but it means that when we are high health, we're more likely to get a decent heal. So it helps on the heals. But generally speaking, most of your heals are going to be from Whip and Embers. That's just sort of a backup option, but it does hit good. Essentially, if you're in a bad offense situation, this is why this is so good against Proctards compared to Heavy. It can be really hard to get out of it, because once the proc, let's call it a proc blade, those are the most idiotic builds in the game right now. If they start spamming Viper and Selene on shit, you can get really locked into defense. It's hard to get out of that. When you create that heal, suddenly you've got a lot of time to do stuff with. You can create that heal, go into Embers, start your cycle. And being able to create that heal far more reliably really does make a notable difference on survivability. As weird as that sounds, I much prefer this source of healing. Even though Heavy gets 8% passive healing, I think that the crit is more valuable in more situations. So I really like that. We're then using Engulfing Flames. That's a big dot. You could also put Talonset if you prefer. I find it a bit of a waste of Magicka in this patch though, but it is a nice dot. Debuffs the enemy, another 10% damage on them there. Obviously adds up a big time. Yeah, great skill. And it also procs our Scoria, of course. And then we are using Volatile. That's resistance. Big dot. Anything close combat is going to take a decent amount of damage from that. Does everything you need. Finally, ultimate is obviously the one on shield ulti. I like that these days instead of Meteor. I think it's a nice backbar ultimate. It gives us that tank ability in any of the times where we're having problems actually setting up sort of a tank setup. If we can't offense to get our stamina back from Bloodthorn, it's nice for when you're moving away from an opponent. But it's something I won't try cast actively. It's something I'll only use if I'm on a really big tank fest. Especially good for battlegrounds, running a flag, tanking a flag, whatever it may be. It's a pretty useful skill to have. Yeah. Then finally, champion points. They are exactly the same as per usual, bar one change. I'll quickly power through them. We have Siphon and Warlord, Bashing Focus, 7 in Siphoning, 28 Warlord, 16 in Bashing. You do want those in Bashing, very important. You are going to Bash Weave a fair bit when you're on the offense. Why? Because your Bashes are cheap, and Bash is a good amount of DPS. So yeah, definitely going to be doing that when you're on the offense, especially close to execute. We're running 7 in Mooncarve. We do have a bit of stamina recovery. You could lower that a bit, I guess, in this build to maybe 4, but it scales pretty good at 7, so I like to leave it at 7. And then we are 37 in Tenacity. That's to help our stamina back from the heavy attacks. 43 in Arcanist. Scales really good for magic return. 20 in Tumbling for roll dodge. 52 in our block cost reduction. Very handy. 7 in Blessed for healing. Not much point putting much more in there. It scales very badly. 20 in Elfborn for crits. Maybe you could even put more in there in light armor. I haven't changed that from heavy yet. 49 in Elemental Expert. That's your base damage increase. Spell Erosion. We have a few points there for even more penetration. We're pretty much peaked against light armor. 40 in Shattering Blows. Really helpful. Sorks are a bitch to kill in CP especially. I only play Battlegrounds. Obviously it doesn't make a difference there. But in CP, having that shield ability does make a huge difference in my opinion. You really do need that. Because in the end, the shields are so huge with CP that it's a bit of a nightmare to kill Sorks. Very strong survivability on them. So having that can help. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to kill them, but it does help. 52 Master Arms. That's for your direct damage. Not much point sticking anymore in there, but it does scale very good. It's huge damage potential from there. 20 Affirmative. That's for dots. In the red, we have 52 Ironclad. Again, just countering out the tree that we had in the blue with the Master Arms. 14 in Spell Resist. Obviously, we want to amp our resistance up. 40 Thick Skinned for dots. 2 in Light Armor because we have spares. 37 and 37 in Hardy and Elemental Expert because they don't scale that much. 19 in Expert Defender because light attacks are a big part of DPS these days. And 2 in Bastion for Igneous Shield. 7 in Quick Recovery for healing. So, there you go. That is the build. Your rotation, same as usual. Put up your dots. Make sure your Inferno hits at the same time as Scoria and your ultimate for the burst, or Scoria and the whip for your burst. Nail them. Light armor, a lot more damage than heavy. Survivability is marginally worse than my Impreg build, and there is nothing wrong with that Impreg build. That's still completely viable, very strong. This is nicer against procs. Come the proc nerf, I will probably play the Impreg build. I think without the proc nerf, I'm going to play this build. I find it more useful against the Proctars just because of that crit heal and the fact that we can stick a lot of heat on them with the penetration. So, yeah, this is my preference right now, but that doesn't mean it's a bad build on the previous. The build before is just as good. It's very top tier, completely viable. So if you haven't checked that, check that out as well. Hope you found it useful. Please, if you have enjoyed the video, subscribe, all of that sexy stuff. If you want any specific videos made, bang it in the comments, not a problem. If you want to do a insert comment here of constructive comment in the chat, feel free. If you're going to talk about something about some gold site or, you know, your mum's nose, I don't care. I'm just going to ban it, so let's keep it productive. Good luck, guys, with the build. It's cheap to farm, it's powerful, it does everything you need, and it's light armor, so have fun. There we go, that's the build video done. Let's get back in action. Alex, are you here?
Yeah.
Let's rock.